Hi everyone, this is Jim. Welcome to this postmortem of my Blitz game number 601. I had the white pieces and played d4. My opponent went with knight f6. After c4 he went c5. So c5 introduces either the Benoni or the Benko gambit. You can sort of decline these by playing a move like knight f3 or e3 if you want to avoid these complicated lines. But well, it's interesting to play against the Benko. I play d5. My opponent plays b5. And I take. I think that's okay. You can decline the gambit right here if you want to. Let's see, the most popular way of declining the gambit is just to play knight f3. And if black takes, you're down a pawn momentarily, but you usually round it up, as happens in so many queen's pawn openings. You usually get that pawn back, perhaps with knight to a3 or with the queen. Cancel that. So anyway, I took, which is a reasonable way to respond to the Benko. And after a6, rather than going for the Benko gambit proper with b takes a6, that's the main line, that's also okay for white. But b6 is an interesting way to play. It creates a little bit of a logjam over here and prevents black from getting two open files. So it makes it a little easier to organize the defense of the queen side. And this also still leads to some slight edge to white. Let's see, so he took the pawn. Come back with knight c3, plays d6 here. All the standard moves, I go with the e4, knight f3 also could be played, g6. And now, yeah, knight f3 is the main move here. I go with bishop d3, which is not bad. That often gets played anyway. We might transpose back into the... okay, no, we didn't. I was going to say we possibly transpose back into the opening book after a couple moves, but it looks like this, we're on our own here. But this keeps some edge to white all through this section here. We have normal development. Queen to c2. I'm looking indirectly at this c4 square, which can be important in the Benko gambit. Sometimes you can put a knight there in particular and get some pressure on the d6 pawn. The other idea for white is to be aware of the pressure along this dark squared diagonal and slowly move the pieces away from that diagonal. And you'll see that in this game. My opponent goes bishop b7. I go bishop f4, taking a look at this d6 pawn. He goes knight to g4. And I could kick the knight with h3, but I figure this knight is going to go to e5 in any case, so why bother? I just continue with my development, rook to b1, so that I can move this knight and not give up the pawn. He goes knight to e5, as I expected, and I decide to trade off. Now, if I were to avoid the trade by dropping back, it looks like I would never be able to get a knight up to c4 because his knight would control it. So I might as well trade it off here. And now he goes, or rather, I go b3. Actually, b3 is the first little inaccuracy for me. I checked this with the chess engine, and I've maintained that opening edge all the way through. And now the engine wants me to go knight to a4, which is a very sensible move. It kicks the queen, so it comes with a tempo. And after the queen moves, I can still play b3. And then I have the idea of routing the knight to b2 and then to c4. So that would be a good way to play. I played b3 immediately, and he just takes the bishop off. So I wasn't too worried about this because I have the center on the light squares blocking in my bishop. So as long as I can keep his bishop out of play, I should be okay. The bishop pair advantage shouldn't amount to a whole lot. But he had a couple of chances here. Let's move on a few moves. Queen c7, knight to d1. I'm trying to reroute this knight. And he went rook f to b8, bringing the rook over. I think right here, instead of moving the rook, he could start undermining the center with this f5 move. And this leads to a pretty good position for black. Let's see. I would defend, and then after this trade, notice my rook defends the bishop, which is under pressure from his rook. He's got some activity. He can hope to undermine the center further with this pawn push, and he is gradually freeing up this bishop on the light squares. So in the long run, this could be pretty good for black. The chess engine suggests a continuation like this, with the queen coming to a5 and then a4 to avoid losing a pawn. And then yeah, it just seems like black has gotten a lot of activity here and sort of turned the tables. So good position for black. Instead, he went rook to b8, which is a typical move in the Benko. It's not as effective here, and this is the point of not trading off that other pawn. Notice this pawn is kind of in black's way. He might be happier if that were gone because his rook would be looking at my undefended a pawn, and he'd have a square for his bishop to come and skewer my queen and my rook. So we'll see in the game after I play knight e3, he just starts pushing this pawn forward. I went knight to c4 here, blocks up this diagonal. I hadn't actually noticed the skewer here, but it also helps deal with that skewer. He pushes on with a4. But throughout all this section, black has some pressure. When I missed my chance to get in that knight a4 and b3, that would have been my best shot to keep an edge. And now the tables have turned, and he's starting to create weaknesses on the queen side over here, a very typical kind of Benko idea. So now rook f to e1, getting the rook centralized and also getting it off of that light squared diagonal. Trades, I take back. Comes in with rook a2. And now I make a mistake. During the game I was wondering about e5 or b4. And looking at it with the chess engine, e4 is the way to go. It actually is the move the engine recommends and leads to an equal position. I thought b4 was good, but there were certain points that I missed. One of them was the fact that this pin is really uncomfortable, and actually he can just take that pawn here because I don't really have time to take back. If I take back, he gets this pin on my knight, and even though my knight is defended at the moment. Let's see, my rook is hanging, so I have to move that with check. And then, it's just really hard for me to ever unravel from this pin. It's kind of amazing the control that he has with his dark squared bishop. So all these natural squares I might move to defend the knight and unpin it at the same time are not available. The bishop is controlling those squares, the rook is controlling these squares, so my queen has very few moves, and let's see, his queen is also controlling this square here, so I have no moves with my queen that defend the knight and unpin. Anyway, funny stuff. It's a complicated line, but eventually black wins the knight there. And the way I play it too, after bishop a6 I took, and he can just take back with the queen, and he wins a piece here. There's no way that I can ever adequately defend that knight from the pins and the attacks. So I was lucky that he didn't do that. He traded rooks here. I took back, and then he just took the knight off. So, but black's still a little better with this move here, queen a7. Oh, I can't say that. I'm sorry. Actually, after this move, queen a7, I have some chances here. I just didn't defend in the best way. The right move here was to just play g3. Defend this way. Let's see. After queen a7, I could just play the move g3 here. And then if he can't take the pawn, this is one interesting point. If he takes the pawn, this is one thing I missed with my bishop here. There's this dangerous move, rook to b8 check, and then when he blocks with the bishop, bring my queen into b5, and I'm threatening to come in here and just mate him. Also, the bishop is pinned, so there's threats of bishop coming here once the rook is defended. So too many threats, and white is winning in this position. So that was my chance here, just to play g3, and I'm okay. I played bishop e3, not recognizing that I didn't really need to defend that pawn, and now places his rook here, and I drop back to defend, and we get into a position which is basically even. He takes, and now that pawn is defended. I play g3 now to give my king some space. He goes bishop to d4. And this is still about even, although it's getting tricky. And in fact, I get worse again in a few moves. But let me show you how it could have stayed in the range of even. I played queen d3, and that's when it starts going downhill again. the way to play this is to play queen to b4 here. And I'm threatening this pawn. And he can do this maneuver like he did in the game. Check. And queen here. Now he's threatening to queen this pawn. And he just lets me take this pawn. And we get into this race. He pushes, I push. And he actually queens first. But I queen with check. And this queen is loose here, so he's got to trade. And in this position, after the check, I can come back and defend my pawn and stay a pawn up. This would be really hard to win, but at least I would be the one with the winning chances. It's just a difficult position with the queens on the board. Instead, I went queen to d3 here. And now he does this maneuver with the check. And back here, and I don't have any counterplay. I just am stuck defending here. And it's a tricky situation. It's actually kind of similar to the previous game. King and queen trying to hold back a pawn. At least there's no minor pieces to harass me here. But yeah, it's tricky. Let's see. He brings his king in, which is cancel that, which is probably the right idea. I bring my king over to f1 to get as close as possible. He pushes this pawn forward, and now his queen is controlling this square. The pawn is controlling this square. I can't get any closer. I try h4. Although in retrospect, maybe f3 would have been a little better, because this allows his king to come forward. Oh, he tried queen c2 here. And notice I can't take the queen because the pawn is too far away. But I can bring my king one step closer. Now he plays king f6. Right here is my chance to draw the game. Queen takes queen, pawn takes, and then king here will stop the pawn. And I'm just in time. When he attacks this pawn, I can play f3. And I'm just in time to hold everything off. Instead, I played queen d2. And he comes in with this king. I think the winning move here was queen to b1. This just simplifies more quickly, and his king is in a good position here. So I can't move my king anywhere. The king has no legal moves. So I have to block with the queen, and if he trades, it's his turn now. He steps here, and it's just tricky for me to find any way to save this position. His king can come forward, and he eventually breaks through on the queen side over here while keeping my pawn tied up. So it looks like this is actually a winning, keeping my king tied up with his pawn. So this is actually a winning position for white. Let me see, I might not have played that the best way. Let's check once again. Not h6. Well, h6 is one of the winning moves. f6 is even better. f6, king d2, king d4, taking the pawn. And you can see I have run out of moves, basically. I don't want to move my king back, and I have to start pushing my pawns forward, g4. And he can exploit this by forcing some trades here. And now the chess engine is finding a way to break through completely. So e5. Oh, I play e5. Yeah, it's just the problem is he's just run me out of moves. I have no moves with my king. And well, any move with my king, he can step forward. And if I move any of my pawns, he starts taking them. So he just runs me out of room of moves and wins that way. Okay, let's go back to the game. And so in this position, instead he played king e5, which I think keeps some small edge for black, but it's not so good. I play f3 to keep his king out. He goes king to d4. Now I remember my trick with the trade, and I get that pawn. He comes in here with f6. I take the pawn. He penetrates with his king. And this is a bit tricky. King to c3. King takes f3. And king to d4. He still had winning chances right at this point, but he had to play a pawn move here instead of taking there, just keeping my king away from the pawns one step further. If he can disrupt this, these two pawns are the ones that I hope will become my passers and win, or at least draw the game for me. So if he can keep these held back and undermine them at the right time, then he can win this game. But so king to f3 was just a little bit too rushed. I come in here, he takes another pawn, but now I can get my pawns going, and this part was played fairly correctly. He gets he gets 2 passed pawns, and I get 1. But since we both queen, it turns out to be okay. And except I do one more mistake before the game is over. Let's see. He goes here and queens. I delivered a check with my queen on this square, which is actually defended, so he could just take my queen here. But well, we were playing quickly at this point. Fortunately, he missed that, and this is probably a draw from this point. Cancel. The engine was recommending the check here as a way to most clearly draw, but I think this is still drawing. I just have to avoid certain checks that win the queen, or force a trade of queens when this pawn can queen. So I just have to, now that this pawn has gone forward, if he can force a trade of queens with this pawn ahead of my king, then he can get another queen and win that way. So just have to be careful where I place my pieces. But I played this part okay, it appears. So he went queen to f5 check, and at this point he just went for the draw. I guess he was getting low on time or not sure how to proceed, and so after some repetition, the game was drawn right here. So anyway, interesting game. Hope you guys enjoyed this. Leave any comments you have in the section below, and I will see you again soon.